I think the question that we were all talking about before the event started was how Canva, which has done, it's a wonderful online design platform that has been on the market for about 6 weeks, and I understand that you've now had 80,000 registered users. So there's a lot of excitement around it. It's going really well. But one of the big questions everyone has around Canva is how they raised so much money before you had a product in the market. So I'd like to start directly with Melanie to say, at what point did you think, I need to raise capital? And at what point did you think, I've got enough here to actually go and line up some quite significant investments early on?
So Canva is actually my second company. My first company, Fusion Books, is an online design platform for the school yearbook market. The plan was that desktop publishing software, which I used to teach when I was at university, was really complex. It was really difficult to use. And so started the first company based around this idea, but applying it to the niche market. So when we looked around and we realized that there was still 5 years after starting the first company, there was still no product in the market that did what we had always planned for the future of design. It really was the time that we decided to take it to the next level. And so that was when we started to approach investors, when we'd already proved it out in one small market.
So the traction that you used was based on your older business, and you, I guess, were pitching that you were ready to segue into a broader use software product?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we demonstrated the utility of our concept, the fact that it was actually working in the market, the fact that we had so many schools using it, that it was very popular, and these schools were continuously asking to use our software for other products.
I spoke to Rick earlier today actually about Canva specifically, and you said of the 500 applications Blackbird's received in the last 8 months since launching, there's been 9 deals, and that Canva was the rule breaker for you guys, and you were delighted to smash those rules that you apply to the companies you pick up. Tell us, what is it about Canva that made you guys go, yes, this one's a go out on the limb, let's do it kind of deal?
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things we look for at Blackbird Ventures. Firstly, I should say we're a new venture fund, so we closed our fund in February, so we're still learning how to articulate our investment strategy. But what was very clear to us is that we don't do business plan investing, and we spend a lot of time saying no to potential investments, to founders, because they haven't got a product out in the market, and we say to them, we want to see, it's becoming a bit of a catch cry for us, a core group of happy repeat customers. And how many that is not really the issue. It's more that there is that quality. You obviously need a certain number to prove that quality. But what rules are meant to be broken, and we are happy to break the rules when we see something special. And there are a number of things that we saw in Canva that made us want to invest at this stage. And the first is that I had known Melanie and Cliff, her co-founder, for about 2 years before we ended up finalising the investment. And what was clear to me from the beginning was that there was a really what we call sort of authentic connection between these two founders and the problem that they were trying to solve. And that authentic connection was that they had had a lot of experience in the graphic design industry. Melanie, from way back to teaching graphic design at university, through to their experience in Fusion Books. And it was very clear to us that they had this sort of authentic connection and this real passion for the business that they were trying to create. And I guess on top of that, that's number one, that, was this, having seen what they'd built at Fusion Books in a similar area. And I think the thing that sort of clinched the deal, sort of obviously in the end, was those guys' ability to get from, they were in Perth. I think you'd never been to Silicon Valley, hadn't been to Silicon Valley, to, and that really see them network into the community and get into the mainstream, the top end of the Silicon Valley community. So the ability to see all of that and see these two founders really developed sort of, was the driving factors.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about that Silicon Valley activity, getting in there, getting amongst a lot of the investors and beginning to develop a little bit of profile and a little bit of traction. I understand Bill Tai was amongst the first investors, which is a fairly big name to bring in for the first time. Bill actually was going to be Skyping in tonight but couldn't make it digitally. So we're joined by Rick, which is great. Thank you for coming. But Mel, tell me about how you, I guess, how you got on the radar of Kite VC, and why you decided to take this idea to America first rather than pursuing local investment.
Yeah, sure. So I actually met Bill at a conference. We had a 5-minute conversation, and it was the first time that I'd even spoken to a VC before. It completely blew my mind that there was this whole world outside of startups, and it was actually a community rather than, when we started out, we just had a company with no credit history. So it was difficult to get a loan from the bank. So that was our knowledge of the startup world until we'd had this conversation. And he said if I went to Silicon Valley, he would have a meeting with me. So I jumped on a plane a few months later, and my brother actually lives over there. And so I crashed in his apartment for 2 weeks, had this conversation on the first day, and he was like, I'm going to invest in this company if you can find the right tech team. And so I ended up going on this whirlwind of learning everything I could about startups. I spent 3 months there just learning absolutely everything I could, really immersing myself in the startup community. And then, so it was kind of just the way things fell out was we started raising money in San Francisco rather than actually trying here first. But we've been really fortunate to get some great people behind us. Like when I was sitting there and having a conversation with Lars Rasmussen, who's the founder of Google Maps, for the first time, and you realize that these people are people that come from our planet, surprisingly enough. And they're so supportive of your vision, and they're so happy to get behind you. It really completely blew my mind, so it's been quite a journey.
Tell me about that, I guess the first pitch that you did, perhaps the first kind of sit down and pitch. I know that your slide deck has changed literally hundreds of times. Tell me about that first, the first pitch you ever did and how it went and how it felt.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the vision has stayed very, very concrete right from the beginning, actually from more than 5 years ago. But the way we actually have been able to articulate that vision and to communicate that has changed dramatically. Things that we just take for granted have actually become a core part of the pitch. But the very first time I met Bill in San Francisco was quite hilarious. So if you've been to San Francisco, you might know University Avenue, which is a very well-trodden street there where VCs are meeting with entrepreneurs all the time. And so I had heard that in Silicon Valley you have to dress down. It's very casual business attire. Well, actually not business attire at all, it's very casual. So I hopped up there in my dress, and I was just trying to wear, I wore a business suit jacket, but not my business pants as I was always wearing at the time, trying to dress really casual. And the very first thing that Bill said to me was, "You don't need to get dressed up." And I was just absolutely mortified. And then from there, I had my pitch deck, which was actually literally cardboard that we'd printed off on we've got digital printing presses at the time for the first company, Fusion Books. And so I was sitting there trying to eat my lunch, with my paper pitch deck, trying to sell the vision of, the future of design. And it was just really, really going very badly. He was sitting there on his phone the whole time, and I was like, he's not really listening to anything that I'm saying. And he said, I had studied some psychology, and in psychology they say that you should mimic the body language of the person to try to get them to like you. So I was sitting there trying to do that, but he was sitting there with his arm behind the chair, and I just could not go there. Anyway, I was thinking this meeting was just not going well. But then when I got back after this atrocious meeting, what he was doing on his phone that whole time was actually introducing me to his network. And so he was actually sending out emails of introductions. And so over the next few months, I was just having all these meetings, and they were introducing me to more people, and I was starting to get to know the Silicon Valley way. But absolutely, the first meeting, I hadn't really anticipated that it would turn out the way it did.
Now, Rick, you mentioned that you'd known Mel and Cliff a little while before they became an investment partner. Tell me about that process of transitioning, I guess, what is a standard professional relationship into more of a closer partnership. Did you ask them to come in and pitch? Did you bring other Blackbird people along with you? Tell me about, that scaling up of that relationship.
Sure. So the first time I met Melanie was on a kiteboarding trip in Perth with Bill, and after a few glasses of wine, Melanie pitched what was then her business, and she's right. The vision is very, very similar. In fact, it's the same, but the way you articulate it is very different. And it was, we all laughed, and I think Melanie knows why we often laugh at the pitch and how it was put together. And the first.
Would you like to share that with the
No.
room?
And one day, I'm sure I've got a copy of it somewhere. One day when you're really successful, we'll bring it out, and and it wasn't a bad pitch. It just was not. It wasn't a Silicon Valley pitch. And as you probably know, there is a huge thing around pitching in Silicon Valley and now here as well. That you have to have this pitch, and it has to be this way, and it has to be like this and like that. And I could see clearly this wasn't one of those pitches. But funnily enough, not for the wrong reasons. Not for the wrong reasons. One of the things I picked up very quickly was this authentic connection, and we weren't even calling it at that stage. Blackbird hadn't been formed at that stage. I was at my former job, which is at MLC, and then there was no formal process. I think you guys came to Sydney a few times, and we worked a little bit on the pitch, and you would send me a new version of the pitch quite frequently, and I would write back and say almost the same thing, that let's get it a little bit more concise, and let's tell a story. So that was that process. In terms of formally pitching, by the time these guys round had got together, in fact, Blackbird we hadn't yet closed our fund and got our money to invest. So very kindly, these guys kept a little piece of their round for us, and we came in as soon as we could. But formal pitching process. The guys came in and met Nikki and Bill, my two partners at Blackbird, and I think we met a couple of times and really made the decision. Obviously I had the background knowledge and had spent quite a bit of time looking into the industry and how it might fit. So it's a little bit different from normal.
So it was around 3 million, wasn't it, the total amount raised? And you're working with a variety of different investors in different countries. As a startup, and I know you guys, is it 20? How many people are on the team now? I know I asked you this today, I'm sorry. 12. And you're now, 12 people big, which isn't huge yet. How are you, how much of your day and your week is involved in managing these different investors and their expectations and spending the time learning with them?
We're really fortunate to have such a strong group of investors. These are all really experienced entrepreneurs who've had an incredible wealth of knowledge in a lot of different areas. So what's so wonderful is that we send updates, of course, but when we have a question, if we want to know something about it, any particular aspect, all we have to do is reach out, and we've got incredible advice just at the end of an email or at the end of the phone, or having a coffee meeting. So there's very little time of overhead, which is just management. It's more actually being able to benefit from their expertise.
As an investor in still quite a young company, what are your expectations around the ongoing relationship? You guys will be with them for a couple of years. I guess what would you be looking for from a startup that you're working with in terms of, reporting or communication or making large strategic decisions, as I imagine will begin to emerge soon?
So at this stage, we as seed investors don't generally take a board seat, so we're not quite as involved in the sort of, formal part of the decision making. So it's more of an informal relationship, and really it is, as Melanie said, it's being on the end of a phone line or an email to be able to bounce ideas off. We sort of think of ourselves as a bit of a sort of intelligent switch trying to connect people. I mean, we have a certain pattern matching base knowledge, which is growing quickly for us in terms of seeing very similar things that are happening in companies that are at similar stages, and so we try and help with that knowledge as much as we can. But in many cases, the knowledge is too specialist for our immediate sort of skill set. And so it's very much about connecting founders into other people at the right times, and particularly sort of hopefully at pivotal times where a connection and a bit of advice from someone in the right time, right place can make a bit of difference.
Now you're 80,000 users in at least. I mean, I think that was a week old, so you're probably far beyond that now. But I remember speaking to Bill Ty about Canva, and he said the big challenge for you guys would be distributing your product online. And if you guys could manage to do that, then you were set. Clearly, it's not going too badly. In terms of which markets you're targeting, are you targeting particular markets? Are you letting it grow organically? Tell us a little bit about your growth and customer acquisition strategy.
We've been really excited by the uptake of Canva, in particular with the bloggers and with content marketers. Canva is such an important part of their life already. Like they're having to constantly create presentations, or they're having to create social media posts, or they're having to create Facebook covers and that sort of thing. All of, like, in a lot of different industries, there's so much pressure to look professional, and not having the tools has been a big pain point for a lot of these people. So Canva's been spreading really great through word of mouth, which has been fantastic. We've also been really surprised by the different markets it's been getting uptake in. Obviously the US is our biggest market alongside Australia and the UK, which we've done no marketing in the UK at all. And then in just random countries, like we're really big in Japan, and we don't even have a translation module yet. And just all of these different countries where Canva's starting to grow organically, but bloggers and content marketers are a very key market for us.
And in terms of relying on that word of mouth marketing, partly that's going to come down to where you're already strong, so I imagine those countries will continue to grow. But in terms of accessing new markets, and I guess specifically looking towards Asia, do you have plans for having a translation module, or perhaps connecting with key bloggers in, say, China or South Korea to begin to fuel that growth, or are you just going to let it grow naturally?
We're absolutely going to be building a translation module. I think Canva is very applicable across a lot of different markets. So that's certainly in the not too distant pipeline. And then we are working closely with a number of bloggers who have either approached us or have blogged about us, and then we're like, hey, awesome blog, thanks for promoting us. And then we have a conversation and help to foster that relationship.
In terms of that, just returning to the idea of pitching and the variety of creative ways you pitched, one of the comments that we hear a lot at startupsmart.com.au is that Australian and American investors are listening for slightly different things, and that perhaps traction is more important in the Australian market than it is in the Valley. Do you think that's an accurate representation of what you went through and what you learned about the process?
I think every investor is very, very different, but I think the Australian investors that are popping up now, like Blackbird, it's really fantastic that they've got a very global outlook, which is absolutely imperative for VCs. And so obviously Silicon Valley, that's sort of been bred there for a very long time. And the connections and the introductions and all of these sort of things that just come part and parcel with the Silicon Valley investors. And now with the new breed of Australian investors, I think that it's definitely moving in that direction.
That was great. Thank you so much. Really excellent session. And thank you, Rose, Rick, and Melanie.